for those people who don't know, because I spoke probably on our second show, I talked to Curtis Xavier, who's now working out of Birmingham Aston Basketball Academy, and we talked about this idea that in the UK academies don't all look the same. Like you mentioned the word academy, and as a parent who's maybe just getting into kind of serious sport or serious performance level sport, they might have this idea that all academies look pretty similar. So can you describe a little bit about what does life at an academy look like at Oaklands? What does the week look like? What kind of things do you do which are different to any other normal student coming into that environment?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, in terms of being an EABL and a WEABL academy, we're regulated, so that's the first difference. It's a BE accredited program of 14 programs across the country, and there's a qualification that goes alongside it for those that qualify. So those on the regional or national pathway can get involved in what's called a DICE program, so a diploma in sport and excellence that goes alongside their normal study. So that's the first kind of separator, is for those that are like looking into this step and looking at what it is that, like you said, there are hundreds of places that say academy on it, but which ones are accredited, and then obviously which ones deliver the type of environment that you want. So there's different environments. Ours obviously links with a pro program now, so there's an opportunity to really get pushed at the highest level. There are other ones that play at the Division 1 level and put their academic team in there, which is a great competitive level for 17, 18 year olds, and that level's improved, which is great to see since the formation of WBBL. It took a hit in the first couple of years, but since it's grown and it's become a really competitive league. So it's doing your research to figure out what level it is you want to kind of pitch yourself at, because they're not all equal. And then when it comes to the delivery model, again, we're all slightly different, but it's full on, it's every day, and because we're accredited, the difference is you've got a certain level of coaches working with you every single day. So there should be shooting, there should be individuals, and there should be some kind of team element going on in every single day around your studies. You also get strength and conditioning delivered by performance strength and conditioning coaches, and obviously like back in those days when we were there, I used to throw my hand in personal training and do all that sort of stuff for all our players at the same time. But that's been really good to pass that on to somebody with much more experience and ability to help drive and push players through. So and then you've got physio and the wraparound support of the academics and all those sort of things. So there's a big separator when it comes to those accredited institutions and the amount and the volume and the body of work that they're doing with players on the floor. At Oaklands, we just take a slightly different kind of view, that our performance end of our program, which I manage, like I said, we do a lot of breakdown work, we do a lot of small group work with those guys, and we kind of save the teamy element to the National League, to the WBBL, just because we feel like the Wednesday opportunity is a growth one. They're playing against their own peers, they've got an opportunity to express themselves, show some things, bit of trial and error, which is a great way to learn, and obviously the only real test is the game, so it's great to use those Wednesday games as those opportunities. So we look at those games to be competitive in every game we do, but we use it as much more of a kind of a performance analysis opportunity to have a look and reflect on where we're at. And then when those that are able step up to the WBBL, which looks quite different now, so obviously we're about a 50-50 split between professional players and then the academy players, which is a far better model. Trying to do it just with academy players is very difficult, and it's probably doesn't give them the most learning, because they don't have somebody that they're going against every day in practice that's pushing them, but also they need to learn the ability to compete and win. So having senior players along with them in games teaches them those things, whether they're being successful at the end of the day or not. It's the habits that they're learning about being pushed and about how to win. So our setup is much better right now. So it's an interesting dynamic. It's an interesting dynamic in the WBBL, where you have the likes of us, Spark in Caledonia, that probably label themselves as kind of performance development programs within that league. And then you've got half a dozen that are university based, so they're obviously on a kind of 2 to 3 year cycle of players trying to maximize their ability and help them in that middle transition period. And then you've got a couple of club programs. But I mean, I know you had Len on here a few weeks ago, and the ironic thing about the league at the moment and the area it's got to go to is you've got Len, who's undefeated and won back-to-back, and he's telling you he trains twice a week mixed with under-18s with his senior group, and yet we're doing 20 hours a week every day, train 4 times a week, but we're doing it with a lower level group and a lower level talent. So, but we know it's the right environment. We know we're setting them up for what's next in their career, and the level of talent will only increase and improve as that program moves forward and as we continue to develop.
So you've actually answered a couple of my questions, because I was going to ask you about, what is it like trying to manage that kind of that dual pathway of, the WEBL and the WEABL. I always pronounce that incorrectly, and the WBBL. But you kind of covered that, and then you talked a little bit about the fact that in the WBBL there are lots of different structures. So, like you say, you've got your university-based teams, you've got your totally pro teams, you've got your your situation. Are there, we actually spoke about this maybe a couple of years ago. Are there any other structures that you look at and you think we could still do with being a bit closer to that, or we could take a little bit from what they're doing? Are there other kind of not in terms of their output, the final product, but in terms of the development process and structures that they have in place, or administrative structures, or the way that they've managed to buy in with commercial partners? Are there any other teams that you look at, and would you tell me what those are?
Yeah, I mean, brutally honest, there's not many in the UK that we've got to look at, particularly on the women's side. I mean, the league is trying to make strides forward, and it's moving. It's not moving kind of quickly enough for what I would like, to be honest, in terms of commercializing the league, trying to get it to that next level of professionalism. But it's definitely got a working group that's doing some good stuff. Julie Koppel, who plays at Seven Oaks, was appointed this year as our first kind of representative that was employed by the league to go out there and get all this information. So it's really going to be interesting what she comes forward with for us in terms of suggestions. I think the first thing we've got to do is look at the BBL. So they get bashed a lot. But if you look at obviously the downturn they had when the TV deals all fell through and all those things happened kind of in the 2000s, if you look at their rise back up now, where they've got more programs that are building and in sustainable arena situations now, broadcast, live stream, all of those sort of things. So that they've done a really good job in the last kind of 5 years of creating that environment, and I think the WBBL should look to that first, because it's in our country, it's achievable, we could definitely do that. So we need to be working towards that. And then I think the next thing to look at is why not shoot for the top? Why not look at EuroLeague and Eurocup types programs? Because it's interesting when you look at those teams, how successful they are, that their models are where we've tried to get to right now, which is it's kind of 6, 7, 8 high level players, and then the rest of them are locals and youth, and they don't get opportunity to play. They're not put on the court in those games, in those situations. They play some limited time in their own domestic leagues, but it's a phenomenal learning environment for those kids. So I think the struggle we had is we tried to have a 3-tier situation when we first became WBBL, which was to have a group of WEABL, a group of dual WEABL and WBBL, and then a group of senior players. And that, I think, was a failure, because no matter which way you pull, somebody's getting left behind. It's too big a jump from the WBBL down to just your WEABL group and academy. And I think that's where you give Leicester and Charnwood some props, is that they decided to, en masse, put their WEABL into D1, which is a better environment for those kids. They're still being pushed and challenged. And then it's just the odd one kid that can really step up and be involved in one of our top teams in the country. So we moved away from that model, and we've basically identified kids that we believe can be pushed for minutes, and they're involved in our WBBL squad. And if not, then we have a Division 2 program now with the University of Hertfordshire, which we hope to become Division 1 in the next couple of years. So we can follow that kind of program, that kind of model. And then the idea is that we're open about it to our own players, and we talk about it all the time. we want to get to the stage where it's virtually impossible for a British kid in a national team to find court time in the WBBL, because if they can, and if they're in that position, the last one to really do it and earn it is probably Holly at Leicester. Then you know that they're the real deal, and then you know that we're producing future national team players, which I hope is kind of in some degree all of our responsibility to produce, that are actually going to stand the test of time. So at the moment the league isn't quite there for that, and that's what I'm pushing for, and that's what I get on to Michael about a lot, is how can we get there, how can we push this level up, how can we get us to a situation where the challenge is so tough that only the top ones, the ones that really want to go after it, can get there. And the interesting thing that I found in the last couple of years is it's not the ones that have the talent before they come. It's the mentality. It's the ones that want to work. It's the ones that want to be challenged and aren't afraid of failing. Those sort of things are the most important things for me when I look at potential players for the WBBL, because their growth is exponential. Once you throw them in that environment, they thrive. But if you take somebody that's got some talent but wants to be in a comfort zone and put them in that environment, they really struggle. So that balance is what we've kind of worked on, and we're getting there year on year. There's a lot of off-court stuff that happens to go towards that, to try and be as competitive as you can be. We just had a new facility built for our academy students, which in turn should free us up some accommodation, because it's expensive to live in St Albans. So we don't have to put a vast majority of our budget towards housing people, so we can start to level up the senior players that we come in. So all of those things they're happening. I'm just in a hurry. I want to get there. I want to do it now.
As usual.
Yeah.
Well, look, let's before we end the show tonight, I want us to just kind of root us in the here and now. And obviously, you know, we're in the midst of a pandemic, and it looks like we're on the right side of, you know, the curve, and, you know, barring any kind of second wave of excuse me, of you know, a rise in the pandemic. We're working with Basketball England. They've just released their return to play kind of guidelines. Just for you as a coach, what do you see as the main challenges? I mean, I don't know, like, how much contact time you would normally have, or whether you're having more contact time with kids because they're so desperate to be on the floor and the season was kind of curtailed early. What have you found the main challenges to be?
I mean, in all honesty, my own mental health. I mean, it's tough. This has been a really difficult period. I've had some really bad days, some really kind of down, dark days. I'm anyone that knows me, I live on the court. I'm on the court 24/7. I'm working myself crazy. I mean, in that period where I said that I was doing national teams, I would constantly burn out because I'm just so full on, and you crash and you pick yourself back up and you go again for the next year. And that's kind of why I stepped away from that national team environment. It's because 7 years on of doing that, it was just exhausting. It was just, I needed to step away from that. But this is totally different from that. It's different than being able to do what you want to do all the time and getting to the point where you fatigue doing it. So I think that the mental challenge of just not being able to do anything has been the toughest thing. It's been really difficult for me, and it's kind of what we were talking about at the beginning. Really makes you reflect and think about kind of what's going on. And there's some good stuff that's come out of it. There's a lot of community going on right now. People are sharing. There's so much resource online, but I'm a doer, so there's only so many of those things that I can kind of connect with. And I've given myself a task to with my own performance group of coaches, is that I give them homework each week, and we get Zoom calls, and we're really evaluating our philosophy from breaking down game to looking at figures to then really diving in and saying, is this going to work in the environment? Does it work with the kids that we have? So I've given myself that kind of task, and that's just kept me going. But to not be able to be on the floor is difficult, it's torture. But at the same time, it also makes me realize that there's stuff that I haven't done in 10 years. There's when I left Solent down there and went on that journey to go and become elite, people talk about sacrifice, and I think I like to look at it more as there's a cost to doing everything, and you've got to decide, is the cost worth it? So we talked about our circle and our relationship. One of those things is the cost that it cost me, and you're not the only one. There's others, and there's like I played guitar. I used to play golf. I'm very much into wildlife and conservation, and I didn't do any of those sort of things for 10 years. So I just lived in a black hole of basketball. And yes, I pushed myself as a coach and learned a lot of things, but I left a lot of things behind, and those things are really important too. So I think that's the last sort of couple of years, but definitely this has drove it home, is to have that balance, to have that life balance, to be able to have some separation from the game. Because if you don't, I don't think you're teaching all the lessons to the players, whether they're seniors or juniors. So I think I've tried to do that with our players during this time as well, get them to focus on some other things. We have weekly Zooms, we send programs out, we're breaking down EuroLeague games, we're doing all sorts of stuff with the players to keep them engaged, but at the same time, I'm saying to them, look, this is just like an extended off season, so make the most of it. Just tick yourself over, but there's going to be plenty of opportunity when we do get back, whenever that is. They don't have to worry about court time or opportunities to be in front of me and be coached. That will come. Saying that, in the last 2 weeks since the change, I've been on the outdoor courts doing some individuals with some of our elite players. I just can't help myself. I gotta be out there. I gotta be working with them. So we're doing some more of those, and then obviously, as soon as the college feel comfortable about opening the gym, then it'll be a case of me being in there with 3-4 players at a time, doing individual workouts and kind of see where we get to. But yeah, it's been a real challenge this time for me, and it's made me reflect on a lot of different things. And I think it's important for me to start getting back to some of those kind of other hobbies and reconnecting with some other people. It's going to be really important, and I don't want to lose that. I don't want to lose the opportunity to do that when the season kicks back off again, because it's very easy to fall back into that routine of just being on all the time. So yeah, there's been some changes. I became vegan. I tried that for a bit. I'm doing that, trying to do my little bit for the planet. Yeah, and I just want to do some other things that are going to give me some balance, going to give me a bit of kind of breathing space, mental stability, all those sort of things, so I can go out and be the best coach I can be.
Excellent. Well, look, in terms of how difficult it is to be totally full on and then have that literally pulled from underneath your feet is really destabilizing. And I think any coach who is hungry, all the coaches who make massive sacrifices with their time, the time that they don't spend with their families, the time that they don't spend cultivating their friendships, which I think over the years I've massively taken for granted. I've got groups of friends that just don't invite me to stuff anymore because they know I'm going to say, well, I've got a game, or I've got to be at this, I've got to be at this practice, or I've got to get to Wales, or whatever it might be. And as hard as all of that is, and it is hard, I think I don't ever take it for granted that those things are easy. But as hard as it is, it's horrible when it's taken away. And the irony is that right now would normally be off season, and this would be the bit of the season where I would actually, personally, I would need a break of at least kind of 4 to 6 weeks away from basketball. And I force myself to do that every year, and that's tough, but it's necessary, because like you just said, if you don't do that, you risk burnout, and burnout's something none of us really want to experience full on. But it's very different now, as it is now, because we're not choosing to be off, and we don't necessarily know how quickly we will get back to the practice floor, to seeing our kind of students, to, like you say, to not just, getting online, like even it's a nice thing to do, but it's not the same as meeting up or going to an event where you catch up with half a dozen coaches you haven't seen for the last 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 years. So I'm desperate to get back to that situation, but equally, like you, I'm trying to make sure that I don't regret the time off that we've been forced, this forced hiatus. I don't want to miss opportunities to reconnect with things that otherwise I wouldn't normally do. And fingers crossed we'll never have to deal with another pandemic in our lifetimes where we're forced to be off the floor. But I think that thing about balance, about recognizing what those things are, but making sure that once we can get back on the floor, that we don't leave those things behind, and it's another 10 or 15 years before we reconnect with those other important things in our life. So, you know, one of my definitely, you know, following what I said at the beginning of the show, one of my things is to make sure that I reconnect with as many people who have meant something to me in my life, not just basketball, but just in my life generally. So that's what I've been doing with the show. You know, that's quite personal. I want to make sure that I make some time for those people that have made an impact on my lifetime. Definitely within basketball, there's no end of those people. Lee, I really want to just say a big thank you for tonight, for coming on and sharing kind of a lot of value. You know, there's a lot of little nuggets there that I always scribble down at the end of a show, and you know, they really make me think and reflect on my practice, my commitment to excellence. And you know, every week I've spoken to a different coach, and I'm like, wow, they have really gone the extra mile. And I think so often, you know, players, parents, our supporters, even some of the leagues that we're in, they don't recognize what it takes to be at the top of your game, or the game, whichever you want, you know, whichever way you want to look at it. And just, you know, listening to that story again, there were things there that I didn't know that you'd done, and had gone to those lengths to be the best version of yourself. And I really kind of respect and appreciate you for doing that. And as per usual, you're challenging me to go out there and be a little bit better and do a little bit more. So I really appreciate that. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks for joining us. I hope you'll come back. I hope you'll come on again.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, thanks for having me. I mean, it's great. I love these things that you're doing. You're putting yourself out there, CJ. It's really good. You always did. And I love you for that. So I really hope that we can use this as an opportunity to kind of reconnect more so than we've done in the last few years. That would be really cool. If we can get back to that situation, and look, when this is over, I'll drive down there, give you a big bear hug, give my love to Linny and the kids. I can't wait to see them. Yeah, I just think it's a great opportunity for us all to reflect and think about what's important for all of us. And basketball will be there, and we can all get back to it as soon as possible. But let's use the opportunity to think about what else is important.
Excellent. Well, look, thank you very much. Thanks everyone who's tuned in on the live show. Remember, you can always catch up on this episode and other episodes on the Upstream Media family, YouTube and Facebook, on my own YouTube show as well. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll speak to you next week. Bye.